about anything to do with Revit modeling for a while. We talked about BOM last week, and Josh is available at some point during this call to answer any questions that you guys have about what you've been asked to do or anything in general about the BOM later in the meeting. But there are a couple of things that I feel like we really need to discuss regarding Revit and standards, because a lot of that stuff has changed recently. So maybe let's do that first, and then we can either get into specific Revit questions. I know there are questions about fascia. There's some new trim inside the windows, which I just want to show you guys how to use. There's some shared parameter cleanup that I want to do. We don't necessarily need to talk about it this week, but our shared parameter file is getting a little bit overgrown, and I think we need to start managing more closely what gets put in there and sort of set up a process for parameters, because with shared parameters you schedule them, and we all want to be able to share schedules and have all of our families work for everybody and have everybody know what parameters they can put in their schedules. So I don't have a process for that yet, but I wanted to bring that up with you guys and sort of all of us together discuss a process for doing that cleanup. Yeah, a couple of little tips and tricks about visibility overrides that are really short that we'll definitely show today. I wanted to discuss clean reuse models. I know Claire had talked about it yesterday on our all design call, and she and Carl and I had discussed it a few days ago, and it's something that we are definitely going to be doing moving forward. The specifics of that are half worked out at this point. But I think there are some things that we can start doing immediately, and then we'll sort of figure out what those clean reuse models need to be as we move forward. But the thing that I want to start with today is new standards docs. So I know we had, oh good, my web is not working. Yes, I was watching tennis. So I know there's been a lot of releases of documents and things posted to Trello cards, and you guys are probably a little bit confused about where everything is and everything that you need to look at. In order to address that, I can get to the Trello board, which it looks like I can't. Yeah. Oh, oh. No. All right. Well, I can just tell you. You can listen. So there were 3 cards previously, one for materials, one for parameters, and one for a general standards doc. Those have now been compressed down into a single document, which is stored on the S drive under Revit. I made a folder called standards documentation. And this is the exact same file that is in the Revit parameters card on the BOMGen page.
Revit standards.
What did I say?
Parameters.
Revit, yes, Revit standards, sorry. All right, I really don't know what's happening. Yes. I hit no instead of yes, that's what's happening. I hope you appreciate my beautiful cover page. I worked very hard on it. Little table of contents on the first page. This is just the order that things follow in the rest of the document. Most of this, you know, the content, some of it has significantly changed, and there are certain parts that I want to go over with you, especially regarding phasing and work sets. Nothing too too difficult. Hopefully it'll make things easier for you, but there are some changes that I wanna go over. And then I've tried updating the text on the main modeling section to reflect the thing that we need to model. There's a section for sweep system families, that's my term. That's not a Revit term. That's just how I think of them. They're system defined by a profile being swept along a line, and that's how you create fascia and gutters. So the script has changed. So a lot of the questions that I've been getting about how do I do this, how do I do that, hopefully most of them will be answered in here. Again, if something isn't answered or if it's not clear in this document, please let me know and I will release. Setting up the material library. This is about the same. I guess we changed it 2 weeks ago. Now it's using the BOMGen update as a way to updated your materials to work that way. Read that section and implement it. And then most of the family creation stuff hasn't changed very much. A lot of the stuff that was previously in the family creation section, it had information about how to add doors and windows and casework to the BOM, and that doesn't apply for the most part anymore because we're not doing Anderson stuff or casework inside of the BOM, so I've removed that portion. And then this is hopefully going to be the highlight on the last page. This is the CSI list to use in your blue CSI parameter. And I got this list from Jeremy, and this is everything that the BOM filters out. So if you set your blue CSI to any of these values, it will not show up in the BOM output. These are the things that do show up in the BOM output. And there are some of these that it treats sort of uniquely and processes uniquely, but I don't really feel like you guys need to know exactly how the BOM is processing it as long as you're setting the right thing to have the right CSI code along with it.
Hey, Luke.
Yep.
Just on the CSI list, Josh and I were just looking at Kapoor, and there's a wood decking spec. Kapoor? Yeah, Kapoor. There's a wood decking spec, and for the exterior, for BlueServe Plus projects, it's something that we would probably procure. Would that fall under the wood flooring CSI?
I think it could. We can add to this list as you guys see fit. I think it makes sense to add a different CSI. I think the process for that should probably be send an email to at least me and Jeremy. Josh, should you and Laura be on that one as well?
I don't think that's necessary.
No, just send it through me and Jeremy.
Yeah, these are Revit specific.
Okay. Yeah, so for things like that, just send Jeremy and I an email. Jeremy will add whatever he needs to in the BOMGen code to make it work properly, and I will add the CSI to this document so that everybody knows that it's a valid CSI from that point forward. And then you should, once Jeremy sort of has that integrated into his code and he's processing it properly, then it should work with BOMGen. And he's pretty good about doing that pretty quickly. Most of the time, again, Jeremy, I'm just going to speak for you. Most of the time, it's not that big of a deal. Every once in a while, it is a big deal. So just make sure to check with him and make sure that it's not going to break anything.
Yeah, I mean, typically it only makes a difference if it's something that is going to require any special handling for whatever reason. So if it's just a regular CSI, it almost happens automatically. I mean, it is good for me to know about it, but I would say 9 times out of 10, it's going to pass through without any issue and without me actually having to do anything about it. So.
Okay. All right. So the only, definitely go through this, read what the changes are. They are fairly extensive. Maybe not extensive from last week, but now that everything's compiled into one, and I have made changes yesterday based on some conversations with people here in the factory and in the. So yeah, take a little time and go through that, and let me know if you have any questions or if I missed something or accidentally put something in there that doesn't make any sense, which you all know I do. This is one of the big ones that I want to go through with you guys. I know from talking with designers in all of the offices that the phasing has been really confusing as to what goes on which phases. And I had a discussion with some people in procurement yesterday or the day before about, do they really care how to separate things into preset, post-set, does it matter to them? And at this point, they said eventually, yes, it might matter, but at this point, they're not using it. So I'm going to take it out until it makes sense to put back in. The other people that I had to ask in terms of changing the phasing was some of the people in the design department saying, hey, do we need to do set diagrams? Do we need to show a drawing of the site in a partially finished state for whatever reason? And the response that I got back was not usually. And so I'm taking that to mean that we can sort of do away with it, and if we do have to deal with it on a case-by-case basis rather than make the standard accommodate the 10% situation. So the end result of it was, these are the new phasing standards that I think we should follow. By other, first phase includes any existing topography, grading topography, anything done by the GC, whether it is before or after the mod set goes in by other. So this, we're not using the typical phasing to represent a chronological, this happens first, this happens next. It's more a way of organizing different elements for procurement. And they need to know what other people need to procure and what Blue needs to procure. So this was the easiest way to do it. There is the potential to have, if you have your view filter, if you have your view phase set on Blue non-mod and you have a view filter on, you will see all of the site built connector stuff and none of the mods, which isn't actually the construction sequence and the way that it would go. But this is a way to compress the preset, post-set into a single phase rather than having to maintain what goes on which phase. So by other and Blue non-mod are for all of the site-built things for the most part, and whether Blue procures the items or Blue does not procure the items. Does that make sense to everyone?
Yeah, I think that sounds good.
Okay.
What projects will retroactively have to put in the new phases for the BOM?
I don't think we'll have to do them retroactively as long as Jeremy can. It's not difficult for him to keep the legacy setup and the new setup inside of his code for the BOM gen application. Jeremy, can you comment about that?
Yep, that's my intention, is to keep the legacy method, which is this new one. So that shouldn't be a problem for going forward.
Okay. I heard you cut out for a second, but it sounds like you're handling it all.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah. Legacy won't be an issue. There's no need to go retroactively into the projects to change phase names.
Okay. And I will just I guess we should make procurement aware that the nomenclature has changed. So I'll send them the final version of this and say, this is our old version, this is our new version. So at some point, the BOM and the way that it's organized is gonna look different because of this change in standards. But they shouldn't have a problem with any of that. All right. So after those two site work phases, then we have the mod phases, and there was a new naming convention that Nocti and I and some of the people in procurement have developed, and that's down at the bottom of the page, and I'll show that in a second. And then the last phase I'm just calling rooms, because one of the things that one of our standards is that the rooms have to be created in the final phase of the project. And I thought it would be confusing to have the last mod phase be the final phase in the project. So there's basically going to be one phase at the end. Nothing exists in it right now except for the rooms. And just make sure when you're creating the rooms, you're going into a plan view which has that set as the phase for that view, and create the rooms in that phase. Rooms are funky in that once you create them, you can't change which phase they're on. You can delete them, and you can remake them in the new phase, but you can't just select them and change the phase like you can with all other model objects. So how do we all feel about that? I think that things have gotten a lot simpler. We now have two site work phases, one for blue stuff and one for not blue stuff, and everything else is in the mods. Yay, yay, we love it, Luke, we love it.
Sounds good, sounds good.
All right, so here's the new naming convention, and I'm not sure if Nocti is on the call, and I didn't actually, she is not?
Nope.
I don't think that she made it all the way through all of the approvals, but I'm just not obeying the rules and saying this is to do it. Hey, if you all support me, then I think we can make it happen. So basically, procurement was asking for a way to easily, uniquely identify mods within a project. And because we're having more projects that have multiple products in them, and so the way that it goes is that you have whatever your first product is. So in this example that I'm giving here, you have a project which has a breeze house, breeze pod, and an L-series garage. Each one of those products would have a number. So this first number is the product number. Then you have the traditional, 2-letter code or 4-letter code for the product designation, and then a dash, and then the letter of that mod, what it's standardly been within the within that product. So your C is going to be the same, breeze space mod that it has always been. So everyone should really be familiar with that center, or anybody who's been here for a while and sort of knows the mod nomenclature should be familiar with that. That isn't changing at all. We are, I know it may be a little bit redundant, but for anything that is a one mod product, it's always A. Maybe a little redundant, but just for sake of consistency, we're keeping it that way. And then the last number is the unique mod number per project. So basically what you do is you start out with your first product. That's number 1. Your mod A of the first product is the number 1 mod. Mod B of the first product is the number 2 mod. C is number 3. And basically, when you get done with the first product, go on to the second product, and then the A in that becomes a 4. So this way, procurement and the shop have a way of uniquely identifying a mod on their orders, on their drawings, on their material tracking, all of that sort of stuff. So this is the proposed nomenclature, and I thought since we were redoing the phasing, it sort of makes sense to use this nomenclature as the actual phase name for the mods. So I think that's what we're going for, and hopefully that'll make it easier to be able to identify what's what. And we can also start using these product numbers on our plan. So if we have a site plan, we say, you know, Breeze House product 1, Breeze Pod product 2. So everybody can reference the site plan to the things that are being procured for those individual elements. I know, guys, it gets less exciting. So the last thing that I have in the chain is adding a structural work set, and this was a request of the shop drawing team. I have a meeting with them this afternoon where we can discuss some more specifics about what we are handing them in terms of a handoff model and how they are using that in creating their shop drawings. And one of the things that they're having troubles with is because our current imported steel objects are generic model objects, and we need them to be generic model objects for certain display reasons. If you make them structural models, they don't cut properly. So because we have that restriction, we needed another way to isolate the structural elements so that they can show on their panel drawings, they can show the structure but not show any of the other generic model objects like handrails in the bathroom or, you know, whatever other generic model objects we have. So the easiest way for us to do that is just create a new work set for that element, place it on the work set, and then they can filter by that work set in their views and turn off the factory built work set and leave the structural work set on. All right. So I think that is.
Hey, Luke.
Yeah, go ahead.
The steel that goes on structural or like columns and stuff going to go on there? And what about?
I don't really know. I was just thinking that it would be the steel. What do you think?
Would that be considered like a site-built element at that point, though?
I think based off of their steel, well, maybe it's our steel drawings, but it seems like the SIPs are included in the mod steel, but anything that's site-built is not. I mean, they don't really give a crap about that.
Yeah, any site-built columns should be on site-built. Yeah, maybe that should be renamed to a steel work set instead of a structure work set.
Do they not want the SIPs to be part of that, or?
And
I guess it's just shop drawings for the steel, right?
Yeah. Well, it's not shop drawings for steel. It's shop drawings for the panels that are inset within the steel. So they just want to be able to show the steel so that they know how large to make their panels. But I don't know. I'll have to ask them in more detail when we meet this afternoon exactly what they want to show. We may keep it as structure if they're putting other structural things like the SIPs on there, or if it is only the steel, maybe it makes sense to rename the work set to steel rather than structure.
Okay.
But yeah, I will follow up on that. Very good question. Okay, I think that's all I really want to go through in detail in this document. Like I said, it's on the Trello board, which I can't get to right now. It's on the S drive under standards documentation. So it's 10 pages of some of the most boring reading you'll ever do, but please do it anyways.
It has more illustrations than any of the BOM Gen documentation because of the cover page.
Yeah, Josh, you need to draw some art and kit and documentation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Jeremy.
All right. Let's see. What should we go through now? All right. Let's go through the quick stuff that I think is going to be really helpful. Let's go through the new window families, which aren't going to take much explanation, and then just one short little trick that I have for finding how to override the graphics of something new. Basically, for those of you who are familiar with this, which should be most of you, you can override elements by category inside your visibility and graphics by click on the visibility graphics or hitting VV, and going through and finding the category or the subcategory and changing the way it looks or turning it off. But sometimes you're not exactly sure what category something should go on. And an easy way to figure that out is by selecting the category, right-click, override in view by category, and then you can override it in this window, or you just hit this little button that says open up the visibility graphics dialog box, which is the same thing as clicking on that button, except it automatically brings you down to the category that you're trying to find. So if you're not sure what category something belongs to, sometimes something is sort of buried under structural, I find, and it's hard to find. That's an easy way of just getting a shortcut to where that exists in your visibility graphics dialog. All right. And that one gets the award for shortest how-to demonstration ever. Windows with trim. I don't think I have the windows loaded in here. But basically, I've added the new trim types to all window families, so that when you place a window in a project, the trim is already included, and there's a variable for switching out what type of trim it is. There's a couple little tricks to it. Let's hope this works. My computer's acting up. And this would be used primarily if you have a window which is being placed up on top of a linear siding wall, so like a cedar or a hardy. It doesn't work for elements which are placed in sill bonnet areas because you don't want to have the entire window with trim all the way around it. You sort of trim out the rear of the sill bonnet area. So in order to take care of that situation, Nelly. Yeah, so this is the trim element. I'll just turn it to shaded. Yeah, so here's the trim element. You change the trim type by changing the trim type parameter. So you can see right now it's 6x4 ripped to whatever. So if I change it to a 1x8, now you can see it's a 1x8. You can see the corners aren't cleaning up nice and pretty. And that's because there's dimensions associated with this trim type, but Revit doesn't let you sort of extract that information from the nested family. So there's a separate variable called trim width. So change your trim to whatever you want. You just have to change your trim width to match up with whatever trim type you selected, and that should let your corners clean up nicely. Oh, I did 7 1/4. This is actually 1x8. That's not nominal. So yeah, you get the idea. This is the trim width variable, which is driving those planes. And the trim in these is overlapping correctly. So you have the top piece, which is going over the side pieces. And then you have the side pieces, which are going down, and then the bottom piece butts into the side piece. And then the last sort of nifty variable that's in here is that there should be a trim checkbox. There you go. So by default, it's on, but you turn it off, and it's not going to go away in my editor window. But if I had this loaded into a project, the trim would be gone now. So if you're placing this on a sill bonnet wall in the old way of doing it with the individual panels, you would just uncheck the box and it would turn the trim off. Whenever you do change visibility like that for an object, it both sort of visually turns it off, but it also doesn't show up in the BOM at that point. It's as if it doesn't exist. Something has to be visible in the project in order for it to schedule and to show up. So yeah, don't worry about it double counting or anything like that. Revit is smart enough to know that if you have it off, it's not in the project and it's not counting it as being in the project. Any questions about that one?
Hey, Luke, just the location of the trim in this family, it looks like you have it going straight up to the window frame and covering the kind of rough opening gap. Is that how we should be doing it?
I don't actually know exactly what that details like. I think there's like a ½ inch gap.
Mm-hmm.
But it's my feeling that our Revit models don't need to be accurate to that level of detail. Okay. Actually, Andrew just passed me over a photo of something we were looking at on the factory floor the other day, and right now they're doing trim with a rabbited out area so that they can slide the sidewalk at it. One of the other things that we have to talk about this afternoon is standard details and how they're building things. So once we get more information about it, if it's necessary for us to sort of go back through our families and update how those trim elements are hosting, then we can do that. But I feel like at this point, that's a level of detail that we don't really need to get into with these.
Regarding, I kind of went back and forth with if they were rabbiting it or not, which made it difficult for us to model anything accurately. So I agree that we shouldn't really need to deal with that on a model level. If we want to set up standard details, include those in our set, that's fine, but this type of stuff shouldn't matter too much.
I mean, I'm even thinking that standard details are no longer really our responsibility. They should be the shop responsibility, and we only need to know as much about those details as we need to model things dimensionally close enough for them. So yeah, that's a whole conversation. But yeah, this may not be 100% accurate, but if it gives us a trim quantity readout that is within 1%, I feel like that is a close enough margin of error that I can live with, and nobody else is ever going to notice.
I mean, yeah, and for both the trim. I think your point of 1% makes sense, right?
Yeah. We're the 99%. I know that was really bad. I'm sorry. I'm immediately sorry. Oh, and the one last thing I want to say is that this same type of implementation of trim inside of the window families is something that I want to carry over to the door families. So if anybody has a little bit of lag time and wants to do it, it's not rocket science. It's pretty simple, and I can give you a little 5-minute primer where you can go into the families and look at how I did it, and it would be great. Otherwise, I'll get to it when I get to it, but no promises on when that will happen.
Just a note on that, since Carl's been working through the door families, he has kind of separate working files for that. Would it make sense to be adding the trim to those families?
Yes, it would.
Okay.
Very good point.
Hey, Luke. I was just wondering if maybe this would over-constrain it, but is it possible to affix the trim length to the outer edges of the trim pieces in the model so that we don't have to manually enter the trim thickness to get the corners to join correctly?
It doesn't work that way because there's a referencing directionality in Revit, where every time, so this piece of trim is being controlled by this variable, which is a generic, it's a type variable where you have to select a generic model type. And if you try to constrain a reference plane to a family which is being switched out by a variable, it doesn't like to do that. Like if you try to move a reference plane by changing geometry, it only wants you to do it the other way. It wants you to move reference plane and have the geometry be changed by moving that reference plane, rather than changing the geometry and having the reference plane update. It's like a one-directional relationship.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, and that exact question is why the old mold window families were broken, because I was trying to switch out between different window types which were nested within a mold family and update the width and height variables based on the window, which window was being selected, and that is why they never worked. So I learned that the very, very hard way. Okay, let's see. I've got 20 minutes left with you guys. I want to talk about clean reuse models very briefly. I do want you guys time. Maybe let's do this right now. I'm going to open the floor to all of you guys to throw any questions at Josh that you have, questions or comments about the BOM process. So yeah, Josh, if you want to lead this, or if somebody wants to jump in that has an immediate question, you guys have the floor for now.
Sure. Yeah, so I'm sure you guys are working on bombifying your models, a lot of you in the early stages, and some of you on the call may have more imminent deadlines, but just general questions about procedures or documentation, or if some documentation doesn't make sense, or if you have any suggestions on how we can improve this, go ahead and yell at me.
To be clear about BOM issues, if an asset is missing information, we're still relying on either you or Laura and Luke to approve the family, let's say, that we create, that a project designer creates in process, move it to Blue Standard, and then we can put it into our model, and then we can generate the BOM. Correct?
Luke, do you want to answer that?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. I mean, clearly there's a bottleneck. So
yeah,
I'm
but
not
these
sure.
could also, hopefully, if people are in the future filling out the custom spec form, we can get these created and maybe get a Trello board created for some designer to create these specs so they're ready earlier on, so it's not on the project designer who's trying to meet a deadline to realize that these aren't available and put them in. But and I know you don't like the brighter future answers, but that's how we're hopefully going to make this process more sustainable.
The other thing that I would say to that is I had a conversation with Carl the other day about exactly me being the bottleneck for a lot of the Revit issues, and I am trying to set up some sort of system. I'm not sure exactly how it's going to work out yet, but having a person in each of the offices, so I would probably be it for San Francisco, someone in Ann Arbor, and someone in Waltham, who was sort of qualified to do what I do in terms of approving things and moving them to Blue Standard. So there'll still be a bottleneck, but it won't always be on me. It will be on me and a couple of other people. So if I get hit by a truck, other people have the ability to get those things through the process and will not have to wait as long. And there's really no reason why I need to be the only person doing this. Like, this isn't rocket science. It's, again, just people need to be trained to look for a handful of things. In most cases, there are some cases where things are more complicated, like some of the more complicated families are a little bit more difficult to update, and I would still probably have to do those, at least initially. But I would love to be able to spread this responsibility around to the other offices, and I think it'll make it a lot easier and faster for project designers to get things into their projects.
Laura's also the other bottleneck, and we are in early discussions of moving the database into moving it into job scope, so several people can work on it at once, and maybe Laura could have someone else who can help her out. It's actually very difficult having her gone this week with spec requests. So that is another brighter future answer.
One thing though that I do want to mention right now is that if there's a spec that you have in your project which isn't in the Blue Standard library, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's a custom spec. It may, in fact, be a custom spec, but use the generate component list function in BOMGen to get the most current spec database. So this thing is automatically connected to Laura's spec database that she maintains, and just run that. It takes really probably like 10 seconds to actually do these days, which is awesome. And just do a quick search and make sure that the thing that you're looking for isn't already in the spec database before you send Laura an email, because I know I've sent her emails and said, hey Laura, where's this thing? And she's like, it's in the place that I put it that you have access to. So
actually, to go along that, if we find that there's an asset in Blue Standard that's missing BOM information, how do we deal with that?
Definitely let me know. I know that we've run into that a couple of times, and I've also found a couple of families that used to be in there that are no longer in there. So yeah, definitely let me know about that one. There shouldn't be anything in Blue Standard that doesn't have BOM information, and if there is, I need to fix that immediately.
Okay.
Yeah.
How about materials?
Materials are a little bit different. You're talking about custom materials?
No, like if we have a standard material that is on the SDRF and it has a BOM lookup and all that stuff, but the standard material library doesn't have it?
Yeah. In that case, you would need to make the material and go through the steps inside the material section of the standards doc for how to get that material out of your project.
Sorry to interrupt, but
go ahead.
I think the San Francisco phones are breaking up. Oh, I am? Oh,
everyone
I
is.
think maybe it's everyone.
Yeah, you
Sorry.
guys are. From Waltham, it sounds like you guys are breaking up too.
Those are the automatic sensors. I've just been cursing this whole time.
Kevin's on a 7-second delay. Yeah, for standard materials that are not in the material library, go through the process of making that material and adding the BOM information, and then adding that to a material library that is named your project name or your name. I forget exactly what the standard is, and I should know because I wrote it, but create it in your project and then save that material library out of your project into the dedicated place on the S drive.
Actually, can you go through how to add BOM information to a material? Because I haven't found how to do that.
Sure. It is now in the standards doc. Whoa. But if you go,
really, you just, like, whenever I click on a material and go to edit it, there's no place for me to put a material lookup number.
So there's two places to put that. Because you can't add custom parameters to materials, we had to designate 2 existing parameters within all materials to use for our BOM lookups. And not in this one. All right, 1x6 white AZEC. That's a good one. So some materials will have it in 2 places. This is the BOM object lookup in the manufacturer field, and this is the material lookup inside the model field. So some materials will not have this, have anything in this field because the BOM object lookup is stored within the component. But because this 1x6 white AZEC is used by the fascia family, and that doesn't have a BOM object lookup inside of it, Jeremy's BOM application just knows for this type of element, look here for the object lookup and look here for the material lookup. So it sort of depends on what type of material you're making as to whether you need one or both of these. But that's where you put it. And if there's a material that doesn't exist that you need to make, you just have to duplicate an existing material, change the name of it, and change the lookup numbers. So just delete that or change that, change this one, rename it to be whatever it needs to be renamed, and change the description, and then hit done. And then
choose a keynote.
Oh yeah, well that's something that we haven't put into the materials yet. But as we start to standardize the way that these materials are filtered, so this 1x6 white AZEK, we're using the keynote field as a way to filter materials within material schedules. So exterior, you can, like I said, we don't have stage yet, but however you guys find that it's useful to filter your materials, just add those terms into this keynote field. And then when you do a material scheduler, you could say filter material keynote contains trim, and it'll show all of the materials that have trim inside of this keynote field. And then our mark is being used with our tags. So it's, I don't know if we're ever calling out trim or whatever, but you just add whatever you want to show up in your material tag into the mark field, and then that's what will show up when you put the material tag in your elevation or plan. And then after you've filled all that in, go back in here, say create new library. Save it. You can save it on your local machine and then move it into the S drive. And then eventually, when you get to sort of a stopping point and you have all of your custom materials for that phase,
Hey, Luke, also, basic walls, do those require a BOM object lookup? I mean, they have a material because of the design, but do they also get an object lookup?
No, they're another system family like fascia that we don't add an object lookup to. That's another one. Basically, any system family, so floors, roofs, walls, all of those have materials that have both the object and the material lookups inside of them, meaning that they use both the manufacturer and the model fields within the material. So the only thing that needs to be added as a custom parameter to system families is the blue CSI parameter. Blue CSI parameter tells the application initially how to sort it, and then the material tells it the rest of the information without having to add an object lookup to it. And that's only for system families. Component families like appliances and plumbing fixtures and electrical fixtures and all of those sorts of things do need the object lookup, but system families don't.
Okay, so when we run a BOM check and it says object required for a system family, we should just ignore it.
No, it means you need to go into the material that is inside that system family and add the object lookup to the manufacturer field of that material. Or grab the new material from the material library that should have both the manufacturer and the model field filled out.
Okay.
But yeah, so you can see here's the place where you eventually put your material libraries from your project. I'll just make a test one.
Hey Josh, I don't know if this would be helpful for anyone else, but I get the feeling that there are probably like common BOM issues, and it might be helpful on the BOM Gen Trello board to post solutions.
Interesting. We use that board for application development, but I may create a separate board for that. And yeah, we could just use it for general questions. Another, well, I don't know if anyone's heard of a site, Piazza. It's like, well, okay, I'll try not to add another tool into the mix. It's a discussion forum board that people use in education. But yeah, we can try doing that with Trello. Just have kind of like what Luke has done with Revit. Is it Revit Assets? There's two of them. Revit Development. Open questions.
Yeah, I mean, they don't necessarily have to be like videos or anything. Just like where to look for certain things. Also, it would be helpful to see what a completed BOM or completed BOM check, or what the goal is for a project for their BOM stuff to look like. Because I have this BOM check and it's got a bunch of red stuff, and I don't know if I should ignore it or how to deal with it sometimes.
To eventually look like. Yeah. I don't want to, well, it's an interesting.
Yeah, it's a little tough with BOM check because even in a fully BOMified project that's been delivered to procurement with an absolutely clean BOM, there will still be stuff in BOM check that shows up because we keep a very loose filter on what goes out into the BOM check. So even after you've taken care of all of the real issues that you have a lot of, for want of a better term, noise in the BOM check that isn't going to go away because...
Maybe we could just get a list of acceptable noise.
Yeah, I mean, that's probably a good idea, and I think also I mean, it's pretty broad and varied, though. I mean, I think if you sample 6 or 8 projects, it's going to be a very long list. But by the same token, that might also give us some clues as to how to possibly slightly tighten up the filtering in BOM check so that less stuff comes out that isn't of any value, but we don't lose anything. I mean, that's the big issue, is we have to be very careful at the BOM check level that we're not excluding anything that is supposed to be in the BOM, but someone just hasn't been able to put the appropriate information on yet. If you go to BOM Gen and you run, that, and you see your alerts page, that's a much more kind of concrete and refined view of what remains to be done. So a finished BOM essentially will have no missing items, but it may obviously have a couple of auxiliary legacy items, and it'll have some material issue items as well. But a finished BOM will have everything that's supposed to be in there and no missing items, basically.
Hey guys, I got a notification that we're going to get bumped off in probably a minute and a half. So I think we should probably wrap up there.
Okay.
The organizer has ended the session, and this call will be disconnected.